This is Your Anxiety Toolkit, episode number 125. Welcome to Your Anxiety Toolkit. I'm your host, Kimberly Quinlan. This podcast is fueled by three main goals. The first goal is to provide you with some extra tools to help you manage your anxiety. Second goal, to inspire you. Anxiety doesn't get to decide how you live your life. And number three, and I leave the best for last, is to provide you with one big, fat virtual hug. Because experiencing anxiety ain't easy. If that sounds good to you, let's go. Well, welcome back. It's episode 125. That's kind of exciting. I think that sounds like a very big number. How are you all? It's late here. I am late to record the podcast this week. It has been crazy pants over here. I'm working on some humongous projects for all of you. Some that you probably won't know about for some time, but hold on to your britches because they will be here eventually when time gets us there, I guess. And that being said, here I am late on a Monday night recording with you guys. It is dark and it's getting cold and my kids refuse to go to bed. That's not true. They're going to bed, but they refuse to stay in bed. So if you hear the pitter-patter of little feet, that's them being curious little things. But anyway, we must go on with the show. Okay, so let's start first with the I Did a Hard Thing segment. The most amazing segment, if I do say so myself. Okay, here we go. Now, I actually asked you amazing people on Instagram what the hard thing you've done, and the answers rolled in. So for today, I'm just going to actually, because they're short and sweet, I'm actually going to read you a couple of them because they're awesome and you're going to love them. Okay, here are the hard things. One person said, I drove to a job interview while my car was making a wacky, not broken noises, and I got hired. Amazing. I pulled myself out of a depressive state, read The Word for 1.5 hours, and fought lies. That's amazing. I got out of bed. To be honest, I think that's my favorite because sometimes just getting out of bed deserves a massive, massive celebration. Someone else said, I sat with the discomfort of being alone instead of reaching out to a quote-unquote safe person. Now that is incredible. Someone said, I sat through the reproduction unit in biology. To be honest, that would have been actually my favorite thing. I love that stuff. But if it's your hard thing, it's your hard thing. And I honor you and I celebrate you. Someone else said, I went to basketball practice and saw people who trigger my sexual orientation OCD. Amazing. Someone said, I parented, and hands up. All in favor say I, because parenting is hard work. My parents out there, or dog parents, or grandparents, or cat parents, whatever kind of parents you guys are, it's hard work. So I celebrate you. I applaud you. Someone said, I sat through painful uncertainty as an obsession was swimming down the river. Amazing. That is a really amazing work. And last one, I went to work today after my now ex-fiance moved out this weekend. You guys, so brave, so strong, so courageous, so resilient. I celebrate you. Seriously, I do. This is just a list of serious badass things that people are doing. So thank you for sharing that with me. And congratulations, you're doing incredible, hard things. So yay. Okay. All right, let's go on to this week's episode. So the title of this week's episode is this: How to Prevent Social Anxiety. And you heard it right, how to prevent it. So I'm a science girl. I love science. And I'm going to read you off a little research that was only just released I thought it was fascinating. And I think that for those of you who have social anxiety or have someone in your family that has social anxiety, or if you are the parent of a child, you must know this research. So here it is. So the research that was done over a span of 5 years, and it evaluated, they call it the mediating roles, but basically they're trying to see what is linked to having the onset of social anxiety in teenagers. And what they found was this, that there is a direct relationship between shyness and social anxiety. Okay, so what they're saying is in pre-adolescence, if you're shy, you have a higher chance of having social anxiety. Now, I know you guys are probably thinking, yeah, like, duh, I know that already. But just wait, because there's more to this study, and this is why I think it's so fascinating. So what they're saying here is that if you have shyness, you are more likely to have social anxiety. Now, what's the difference? Shyness is basically this feeling of apprehension. It might be a lack of comfort. It might be some awkwardness when you're around people or new people. And, I think we all have that from time to time. It's normal. If I have to go to an event, even though I love people and I love talking to people and I love hearing their stories, we all get a little shy when you walk into a room of a bunch of people or you walk into a room with one person, right? But when it turns into social anxiety, it's severe anxiety. It debilitates your functioning. It really sort of takes you down emotionally. That they're kind of the differences. So, again, when we're talking about a social anxiety disorder, we're talking about disorder, right? That's the whole idea of disorder. It means that there is a lack of order in the situation. Disorder, okay? So here's what the research shows. This is what I think is so interesting, right? Is that the thing that most related shyness to social anxiety was a negative social self-cognition. And what that means is that the people who were shy, the pre-adolescent human beings who were shy, who tended to see themselves negatively, the ones who, put themselves down and compared themselves to others and treated themselves unkindly, were perfectionistic and really criticized themselves and saw themselves as the fault, they're the ones who had a very high link to developing social anxiety, right? Now, what they also found is social interpretation bias, right? Basically, social interpretation bias did not show a relationship of people who with shyness to move into having a social anxiety disorder. Now, a social interpretation bias is this tendency to interpret an event as positive or negative, right? So what they're saying here is, if we did a study and we looked at this group of teenagers who were all shy, the ones who turned to have social anxiety, the ones who were more likely to have social anxiety, are not the ones who interpreted the event as bad, the social event as poor. It was the ones who interpreted themselves as poor, right? It's the ones who, the way they saw themselves in the environment, they're the ones who were more likely to have social anxiety, right? Maybe they had thoughts like, oh my gosh, I look like such an idiot, or something must be wrong with me. Everyone must be judging me. No one must like me. That, I must be a fool kind of thing. And they're ultimately negatively assessing themselves, right? Instead of the ones who viewed the event negatively, like, wow, that was a rough crowd tonight. Everyone was super awkward. Did you notice that? right? The ones who were sort of noting the environment, they were less likely to have social anxiety. Now, isn't that fascinating, right? And if, I know probably you're thinking like, well, yeah, that makes total sense. But it gives us clues on where we can do better with our teens and where we can do better as adults, right? Now, the thing is, I know what you guys are thinking, right? Is like, goodness gracious me, I'm not a teen anymore. Is it too late for me? And this is where I'm going to say absolutely not. It's absolutely not too late to undo some of this. But this research helps us to understand where we went wrong, what went wrong, right? And why some of us were more set up to have social anxiety. First, number one, were you a shy teen? Were you a shy kid? That's the first thing that set you up. And then from there, did you interpret yourself negatively, right? Was your self-cognition, or better, easier to say that's your self-image. Was your self-image negative about yourself, right? And then from there, the work is, how can we be more objective, right? Instead of subjective, which would be if we're in social settings, do a little check-in. How am I assessing this situation, right? Am I putting myself down? Am I calling myself names that are unkind, right? Now, what we don't want to do, let me just raise a flag here. What we don't want to do is go from criticizing ourselves to now criticizing everybody else, right? Because when I say social interpretation bias, what I'm not saying here is that it's totally okay to go and then say, wow, what a bunch of losers. That party just totally was lame, right? Because that's not helpful either. That actually could create many, many problems. But what we could do is we could think objectively about parties, right? If I go to, let's say, an event, right? A conference, or, I've had multiple conferences where I've presented, and I might present in one room, and I'm feeling super confident, and I present and people love it. And then I might present 2 hours later and people mightn't love it. And a lot of that's to do with the crowd and the environment and multiple things. But I'm not going to blame them. I'm not going to say, wow, what a bunch of boring people. No, what I'm going to say is, it just is what it is. My value doesn't change depending on how they receive me, right? That's a really positive social self-cognition, instead of being a negative one, which would be like, wow, they must have really hated me. They must think I'm totally terrible at my job, right? It's just to say, wow, that was an interesting crowd. I wonder what happened there. It was uncomfortable for me, but that's okay because it doesn't define my worth. Or, I wonder if I missed something there. I wonder what I could do differently next time to improve on my presentation skills, let's say. Right? So you're taking this growth mentality instead of saying these declarations of, I'm a loser, I'm bad, I'm socially inept, right? So we have to be really careful about the words we use, right? About ourselves. We have to be really careful about the words we use about the environment as well. While that was not a huge link to social anxiety, I still think it's important, right? And so ultimately, what did we find out here today is that, number one, a lot of this is stuff we're not taught, right? We're not taught this in high school. We're not taught how to really master the way we think about ourselves. And so my hope is I'm going to share this with you, and hopefully you can share it with some teen that you know and help them to understand that, a huge piece of their self-esteem and development socially is about how they interpret themselves. And can they interpret themselves either positively, But if that's too uncomfortable and doesn't feel authentic, at least neutrally, right? And that goes for you guys too. I constantly have teens when I work with them in this area say, what, do you want me just to go and start telling myself that I'm awesome now? And I was like, no, 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 no. That is not what I said. I never moved from one extreme to expecting teens or humans or children to move to the other end of the spectrum and now start praising themselves. This is not a sprint. This is a very slow transition into a short jog from walking, right? And so what I might say is to say, can you just notice one positive thing that you did, right? Can you maybe notice one way that you survived that party? One skill you used, one event or moment you had with someone. Can you savor that? Not the whole thing. We're not going to tell ourselves that we, totally did such a great job and we killed it, right? No. We're going to just slowly inch up on things. Now, guys, this is why we do the I Did a Hard Thing segment. There you have it. We do it because some people, well, I shouldn't say some, I should say many people have reached out to me and said that the I Did a Hard Thing segment changed the way they viewed themselves. Because before that, they thought that getting out of bed was no accomplishment at all. And now they get to celebrate this, what seems to be small, but is huge for them, right? Small steps, right? Moving towards making big changes. And so we, even though it may be too late to quote unquote prevent social anxiety, we can 100% absolutely buffer making it worse, right? Now, I feel like it's really important for me to add here, for those of you who have social anxiety, the gold standard treatment for social anxiety is cognitive behavioral therapy. So what we've been talking about today in this podcast is really basic cognitive therapy, which is being skillful in what cognitions or thoughts we use. But there's also this behavioral component to social anxiety treatment, which is you also have to make sure you're exposing yourself to social interactions. Just correcting your thoughts alone is not going to change a whole ton until you go into social settings and you put it into real-time practice, right? So if I have clients with social anxiety, we make a list of all the social things that they are scared of, and we make sure we do them. We walk across the street to this sort of outdoor mall, and we practice saying good morning to people. We practice asking people for the time. We practice asking people where the bank is and where the grocery store is and where might they find an ATM. And then we practice giving compliments to people. Then we practice people starting conversations. And then we practice, continuing those conversations and getting into meaningful conversations with loved ones, students, friends, teachers, colleagues, customers, bosses. And from there, some people, if particularly their anxiety is around public speaking, we might send them off to Toastmasters, or we might have them present at work or present at school, or present at the OCD conference, right? Or the BFRB conference, or the eating disorder conference, right? So these are all behavioral components, which, in my opinion, I think is really important too in terms of prevention. So again, if you got a teen, give them as many social opportunities as they can. That's where they will thrive. And then help them to navigate their own cognitions about themselves, because that sounds like, from this research, is a high predictor in reducing the impact of social anxiety, right? So cool. Is it me, or is that just the coolest thing and coolest research? Now, if you're interested in this research, go on over to the podcast notes and I'll put a link right there. And from there, I'm going to sign off, right? be kind, be gentle, give yourself some kudos for the work that you're doing, and know that I am in awe of you guys, in awe, with deep respect for the hard things that you are doing. I'll share with you just today, I had a client who did an exposure that was way harder than she thought it was going to be. And the tears rolling down her face and jumping up and down, and really was shocked at how hard it was. And it brought me to tears because you guys are brave, 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 brave humans. And, I wish so much that, I didn't have to, I really do. I wish that I didn't have to, make people do the scary thing. But I'm also so grateful that we can do the scary thing, because so much growth comes from that. So much growth, so much empowerment. So I hope you're noticing that in yourself. Okay. Well, there it is. That's it. That is a science-proven way to prevent social anxiety. Pretty cool, right? All right. Sending you all my love. I will be coming back at you in a week's time, and we can go from there. Okay. Have a great day. Please note that this podcast or any other resources from cbtschool.com should not replace professional mental health care. If you feel you would benefit, please reach out to a provider in your area. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for supporting cbtschool.com.